خططتوا لكبرتكم أو بعد بكير؟ أنا كنت أقول هيك قبل ما غيرت رأيي لما حكالي والدي قصة واحد من أصدقاء العيلة. هو وزوجته عاشوا حياتهم برخاء وحالتهم المادية كانت كثير جيدة، وفروا مبلغ جيد بحسابهم للتقاعد. بأواخر ستيناتهم تغيرت أمورهم لما دخل الزوج فجأة للمستشفى بعد ما تعرض لأزمة قلبية وخضع لعملية قلب. للأسف شريكه أخذ قرض من البنك بقيمة 20 مليون دولار باسم شركتهم وهرب بالمبلغ. تدهورت صحته بسرعة ومن عملية جراحية لأخرى، ومثل ما بتعرفوا العلاج مكلف جدا. كل الأموال اللي ادخروها انصرفت على العلاج والعمليات. طبعا شركات التأمين رفضت تقديم خدماتها بسبب عمرهم ووضعهم الصحي. الزوجين بعد ما كانوا عايشين بقصر وعندهم 6 سيارات وبيسافروا بالشهر مرتين، انتقلوا لشقة من غرفة وصالة، وصار بعمر 68 عم بيكافحوا ويدوروا على مصدر رزق ثاني أو شغل ثاني. تخيلوا بعمر التقاعد تكونوا عم تبحثوا عن عمل. أكيد صعب كثير نلاقي وظيفة بهذا العمر، وكل شيء نصيب. بس في مفهوم غلط منتشر بأن التحضير للتقاعد هو بس بجمع المدخرات. التقاعد ما بيعني إنه نخبي قرشنا الأبيض ليومنا الأسود. لتعرفوا كيف بيكون التخطيط للتقاعد تابعونا الليلة. عادة بنخطط للزواج، للسفر، للإنجاب، بنخطط لكثير مراحل بحياتنا، لكن مع الأسف ننسى نخطط لأهم مرحلة اللي هي مرحلة التقاعد. المرحلة اللي بيقل فيها المدخول لأدنى حد وبتزيد فيها المصاريف لأقصى حد. ببعض الحالات بتصرف الشركات رواتب تقاعدية لموظفيها، لكنها بغالب الأحيان بتكون أقل بكثير من الراتب العادي اللي كان الشخص يتقاضاه خلال العمل، وهذا الشيء بغير المستوى المعيشي للشخص. وهالأيام نلاحظ زيادة ملحوظة للأسعار عالميا، فحتى لو عنا معاش تقاعدي بالأغلب ما راح يكون كافي. أما بحال ما كان عنا معاش تقاعدي وعم نصرف من مدخراتنا، فهون الوضع أصعب وأصعب. ليش؟ تخيلوا معي لو لا سمح الله صار أي ظرف طارئ، مرض، وفاة، انهيار بأسعار العملة مثل اللي صاير بكتير بلدان، فالوجع بيصير وجعين والمصيبة بتصير مصيبتين. شو الحل؟ وكيف نخطط لمرحلة تقاعد مريحة؟ أنا عندي جواب. سمعتوا عن معاشات التقاعد من قبل؟ المعاش التقاعدي مش بس بيكون من وظيفة أو شركة اشتغلتوا فيها من قبل. المعاش التقاعدي ممكن تحصلوا عليه كمان من شركات التأمين. كيف؟ بالانخراط بتأمين المعاش التقاعدي الخاص، وهو نظام ادخار خاص يهدف لتوفير دخل الأفراد أثناء التقاعد إلى جانب نظام الضمان الاجتماعي العام القائم. طيب كيف ترجع لكم أموالكم خلال فترة التقاعد؟ لتعرفوا أكثر شوفوا هذا التقرير.
ما هي أشكال المعاشات التقاعدية؟ المعاش التقاعدي الثابت، حيث تدفع شركة التأمين مبلغاً ثابتاً للشخص طوال مدة العقد. على سبيل المثال أن تدفع مبلغ $1000 شهرياً كمعاش تقاعدي لعدد محدد من السنوات. المعاش التقاعدي المتغير، هنا تتغير قيمة المبلغ المدفوع للشخص من شهر إلى آخر حسب أداء الاستثمارات ونسب الأرباح التي تحققها، كأن تدفع شركة التأمين للشخص المتقاعد مثلا مبلغ $2000 في شهر ما و$500 في شهر آخر. بالإضافة إلى هذين النوعين يوجد تصنيف آخر للمعاشات التقاعدية يعتمد على الفترة التي يتم فيها الدفع، فيكون إما معاش تقاعدي فوري يبدأ صرفه فورا مع بداية تنفيذ العقد بين الشخص وشركة التأمين، أو معاش تقاعدي مؤجل يصرف بعد التقاعد حسب اتفاق الشخص مع شركة التأمين.
المعاشات التقاعدية خيار ممتاز للأشخاص اللي بدهم يكون عندهم دخل ثابت بعد التقاعد وقادرين يدفعوا رأس مال معين ودفعات شهرية بانتظام لفترة محددة. بس لازم كمان دايما ننتبه للرسوم والشروط المتعلقة بالمعاشات التقاعدية، وأشهرها رسوم السحب اللي هي surrender charges، وهي الرسوم تفرضها شركات التأمين بحال سحبتوا أموال من راتبكم السنوي إجمالا خلال السنوات القليلة الأولى بعد إبرام العقد. ومعدل هالرسوم تتراوح ما بين 10% إلى 15% من المبلغ المسحوب. ثاني شيء رسوم الوفيات ومخاطر النفقات Mortality and Expense Risk Charges، وهي رسوم إضافية ندفعها لشركة التأمين لتغطية مخاطر عدم استمرارية الشخص بالدفع، وعادة بتشكل نسبة مئوية من الأقساط المدفوعة. ثالثاً اللي هي الرسوم الإدارية للعقد الادمنستريتيف فيز بتغطي كلفة إصدار العقد وخدمات التشغيل. رابعاً رسوم إدارة الاستثمار أو اللي بنسميها الانفستمنت مانجمنت فيز. هي الرسوم هي لتغطية كلفة إدارة الاستثمارات الأساسية، وعادة بتكون متغيرة حسب نسبة الأرباح المحققة من الاستثمار. خامساً اللي هي قيود الدخل أو الانكم ليميتيشنز، بعض المعاشات التقاعدية إلى قيود على الدخل اللي ممكن نستثمر فيه. سادساً وأخيراً عقوبات الانسحاب المبكر أو الإيرلي withdrawal penalties، وهالعقوبات تفرض وقت بيتم سحب الأموال قبل عمر معين، وعادة قبل سن التقاعد اللي اتفقنا عليه بالعقد. كثير مهم نفهم هي الرسوم والقيود والتدقيق بكل نقطة من العقد قبل توقيعه، لنتأكد إنه الخيار الأفضل لاحتياجاتنا وأهدافنا بمرحلة التقاعد. ولنغوص أكثر بالتفاصيل، ضيفنا اليوم رح يخبرنا عن البرامج المتوفرة لتخطيط التقاعد. شوفوا مين معانا.
دين كامبل خبير مالي متخصص في شؤون التخطيط للحياة، يشغل منصب الرئيس التنفيذي للشؤون التجارية في شركة GSB كابيتال الاستشارية الخاضعة لرقابة سلطة دبي للخدمات المالية. بدأ مسيرته في المملكة المتحدة كمستشار مالي مع شركة فريندز بروفيدنت انترناشنال للتأمين على الحياة، قبل أن ينتقل عام 2007 إلى دبي لتقديم الاستشارات للأفراد والشركات.
Hi, Dean.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you ever so much for having me here today.
I'm so excited to be talking about all the insurance plans and retirement plans that we can advise people today. I know that you have more than 20 years experience in wealth management and especially in insurance, right?
That's right, yeah, I've been here for 15 years.
Yeah, what type of insurances do you have? Do you personally have?
Personally, a very good question. So, yeah, I'd say it's everything across the board, everything from travel insurance to home insurance. Obviously, we've got to have car insurance because it's mandatory here. But personally, for my family, I have life insurance and something called critical illness insurance.
What about retirement plans and all of these?
Yeah, good question. So, as well as the insurances that I have, then I've clearly made sure that I've got a plan in place for retirement planning. And that comes in many different types of forms as well. So, you can take individual savings policies or insurance policies here in the UAE. Some people choose property as well as another alternative.
As like a property insurance?
Not necessarily property insurance, but a property which is going to create an income at some point in the future. I think the key thing is that, listen, we're getting older. The kind of life expectancy of the population is getting older and older year on year. So, and you need to think about when you might want to retire at some point in the future, and then have a plan in place to make sure that you live the best life that you can when you get to that point. But the key thing is that when you actually get to that point, you need to have saved enough money or a pot of money or have investments in place which are going to supplement the loss of salary or loss of income that you have either from your business or from your employer that you have as well. So it's just making sure that you have that plan in place so that when you do get to that point where you decide to retire or decide to kind of like work less days a week that
retire earlier.
Or retire earlier.
Which is the case of a lot of people.
Listen, everybody wants to retire earlier. I hear stories that people want to retire in their early 50s or
earlier
50,
than that,
55.
just like 40s.
Yeah, the problem with retiring in your 40s is that when you think about it, and coming back to the point I mentioned, we're going to get older. So, and obviously inflation's a factor within that consideration as well. There's talk that by 2100, that people are going to be living to at least 100 years old. So if you retire at the age of 40, you've got 60 years to live, and you're going to have income to cover yourself for that period. So clearly, listen, you just need to be able to plan and have a plan in place.
Okay, you mentioned something very important, which is the life insurance, and I'm one of the biggest supporters of life insurances. But a lot of people are kind of against the life insurances because they think that it's not Sharia and compliant. What is your point in that? Like, what is your thought?
Yeah, I mean, listen, like I said, I've been here for 15 years. I fully understand the background in terms of why people have that thought process around life insurance. For me personally, I just want to make sure that if anything happens to me, that my family are taken care of financially in the event of something happening to me. So, listen, it's an individual choice for people. I know banks, if you have a property and you take a mortgage, they insist upon life insurance being in place because they want to make sure that their risk is covered.
So if you go back to countries like the US, you would find or you would hear a lot about the 401k plans, and insurances and life insurances especially, or savings insurances are kind of a big thing in the US. What is the equivalent of that plan in a market like the UAE, for example?
Yeah, good question. So if I look at the US market, the 401k plan is a pension plan with tax benefits. There isn't necessarily an equivalent that sits here. Clearly a lot of people have come to this region because of the great tax benefits you have as an expat. So an equivalent doesn't exist. That said, there are companies that actually offer company savings schemes in this market. So as an example, if I look at the DIFC, the Due scheme was introduced back in February 2020. Back in last year, you had the Golden Pension, which is issued by national bonds. These are employer sponsored or employer-linked plans. So it's up to the employer to actually set them up. Now, clearly in this part of the world as well, you have gratuity, and that is really seen as some form of pension savings vehicle. And I think it's important because clearly it's linked to the time that you spend with an employer, your service and your basic salary. But these schemes kind of are limited, not necessarily limited, but they'll be limited in terms of how much is available at the very end. Mm-hmm. Whereas with your traditional pension schemes, the amount that you can save and the pot can be significantly larger. So outside of that, in terms of people saving through these employer-linked schemes, it's really up to individuals to source and look and find an appropriate solution, whether that be an insurance solution or whether that be an individual savings plan through a number of the platforms or brokers that operate in the market to actually help individuals just save on a monthly basis.
Yeah, you mentioned a very important point, which is the employer or employers are kind of setting up these kind of schemes to their employees, but not every single employer is doing that, right?
That's
and
correct.
Then the problem is employees right here. So a lot of employees, when they lose their, let's say, their income, they don't have any kind of insurance plans that they can typically pay for because they don't have that money or that income that comes in. So what would be the solution in here? None.
It's difficult. So, I mean, when you take insurance, you are basically, you're transferring risk from yourself to someone else. So you're paying for that. Now, that said, I know the UAE government have recently brought in the loss of employment, the loss of employment insurance that's come in from 2023. I think the implementation is ongoing at the moment, and people have to register by the middle of this year. But that said, that still requires individuals to make a small contribution from their monthly salary on a monthly basis.
It's amazing that we're mentioning this, by the way, to all of our viewers today, because a lot of people, maybe the government is doing great right now to talk about it, but a lot of people still don't know that they can, enroll into these employment schemes, right?
Yeah, I mean, this one in particular is mandatory, so this will come into place. People have to register and make sure that their registration is completed by June of this year. Mm-hmm. Awareness is out there. I've heard it a few times myself on the radio, so awareness is there, and I'm sure that the awareness will build as we get closer to that kind of middle of the year deadline.
How people can really get enrolled into these schemes? Like, what is the first step they have to do? They have to go to an insurance company, they have to find the best insurance companies, and how to find the right insurance company.
So are you talking about the savings plans themselves?
Savings plans.
So yeah, I mean, I think the best thing is people can do it directly. There are a number of individual providers that are out there. Clearly, it's important to have a plan in place, and that's one of the reasons why people approach financial advisors, financial planners, wealth managers to understand what they need to do, because fundamentally it's understanding what your goal is, what your pot is, what do you actually want to achieve at the end of that process, and then working backwards, understanding where you are today, and then building that plan from there. Clearly, if you want to retire when you're 50 or you're 55 or 60 or maybe 45 even, you want to kind of bring that forward a little bit closer. You just need to understand what factors and considerations you need to put in to actually get to that point. So actually the use of a financial planner who can actually support with kind of cash flow modelling is really, really important to actually build that picture, help you put a plan in place, select whatever the solution might be, and then support you and then review that on an ongoing basis.
You know, Dean, you're one of the biggest supporters of insurances in general, but what I have found is that a lot of people do not really take that into consideration when they're kind of planning for their lives in general. And let's talk about, for example, which you mentioned just earlier, the travel insurance. So it's one of the most basic type of insurances that are out there, but a lot of people do not do that or do not take any before they travel because they feel like, oh, it's a cost that I'm paying. maybe nothing's going to happen. So I think there should be a kind of an awareness to this type of people and the importance of insurances.
100%. Like ultimately, there are millions of different insurance policies out there, and you just need to understand what is right for you and your circumstances. Now, I'm not advocating that everybody should take every single insurance, but as individuals, look at your individual circumstances. What is important to you? Have that plan in place and understand what you need to have in that place.
Thank you so much for being here. We do have with us a guest that would like to learn more about the sort of insurance plans that he can really benefit from. What about we welcome him?
Yeah, sounds great.
Yeah, let's do that. انضم إلينا مروان إلى الاستوديو، بس قبل ما نتكلم معه خلينا نتعرف على مين هو مروان. Hello, Marwan.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We're having a very hot discussion today about the insurance plans and retirement plans. I know that you're a business owner of a lot of businesses.
Yes, true.
What is your take?
I'm in the entertainment business. I've owned jazz clubs, nightclubs. I do events, I do concerts.
Amazing.
That's my main business.
Amazing. Let me ask you this. Do you insure your businesses?
I mean, you know, if it's a one-off event, recently we had to do insurance. It's mandatory. But most of the events happening, they don't insure their events, unfortunately. So I guess this is where we're gonna.
Yeah, this is where we're gonna discuss it.
Now, yeah.
What about your clubs? You said you do have like jazz clubs.
Yes, and clubs is mandatory to have an insurance, of course.
What kind of insurance?
It's a insurance for the club in general, just in case anything happens to the customer, fire insurance.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
What about investment insurance? I want to make sure that your money is safe. Do you think about that?
Yeah, actually, see, I'm an old school guy when it comes to investment. I'd rather go into properties, so my investment is mainly in properties.
The reason I'm asking you this, and you know, Dean, why I'm asking him if he has an investment insurance, is because part of my daily job or what I do on the investment side, we had put money into a company through a VC transaction. And what happened is, due to lack of due diligence probably from one of the companies, it came to become like not a legit transaction. And so it ended up being some sort of scam. And so the fund or the transaction didn't end well, and I had to return the money back. And it's because I had an insurance over that fund, I could retake it back. But I'm thinking about the scenario of Marwan, for example. What would be the solution? He would lose his money, right?
He would, I think the key thing is it's just understanding what are the big risks. Obviously, you clearly talk about the certain things within your business where it's mandatory to have that insurance in place, and I think it's important to do that. Clearly, the businesses in which you're involved, you just need to understand the necessary risks within the business, and then understand whether you actually need to have that insurance taken out. Ultimately, insurance, you're just passing the risk on from yourself to someone else. So someone else is taking that risk on for you. The key thing is that if you don't think the risk is that big, or you could cover it yourself in the event of something happening, then that's fine. 100%. If you are more concerned about that, then you just outsource it to an insurance company to take that risk on your behalf.
What about retirement plans? Do you have a retirement plan?
It's funny that today I visited my bank. I had a retirement plan which was dormant for the last 10 years. That's because the bank wasn't really following up on it with me, to be honest. Oh. So yeah, and
they were not following up with you in terms of like your contribution to the plan?
So it's a lack of customer service, I guess. And
for sure.
Yeah. So the reason why I wasn't following up with the bank as well is because I got into a state of mind of investing in real estate, as discussed before. For me, it's something tangible. It's something I can touch. Real estate never dies. It goes up and down, but it never dies. So
What are your takes?
It's a good, you mean, ultimately, it comes back to the points we spoke about earlier, that it's all about having a plan in place. And clearly Marwan has actually started that journey in terms of using a retirement savings account. And that's great, because
that's great, yeah.
he took the step to actually begin to save on a regular basis. Now, clearly you've been disillusioned for a number of different reasons, but I think the thing is that whatever you decide to do and whatever plan that you have in place, you have a plan. Because coming back to the point that I talked about earlier about the date that you may retire in the future, that will be different for different people. But having a plan, again, is different for different people. But you just need to make sure that whatever you choose to invest into is aligned with your requirements. But one of the interesting points that you did make, though, is that you need to be passionate about what you're investing into as well. And I think that's really important. Whether
He's so passionate about real estate. I can tell.
But like a lot of people are in this part of the world as well. Don't get me wrong. I've got real estate investments as well. But then that doesn't mean that I don't have a savings plan that runs alongside that as well. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be 100% savings plan. It doesn't mean you have to be 100% property. Mm-hmm. You can have a mix or match in between as well. The key thing is having that plan in place, understanding what the end goal is, and then working towards it.
So what is your goal, investment goal?
My investment goal is to own as many properties as possible before I retire.
Do you have a number in your mind?
Like 10 to 15.
So you have it.
Almost.
Yeah, because
I'm almost
because
there.
this is one of the most important things, and you know that very well, Dean. In the as finance experts, to identify the goals for each, and to know this would help us to really know what kind of investments we would advise people like you. Thank you so much, guys. For being here today. I think we're still going to discuss this in further discussion, especially for a person like you that's from Lebanon, right?
Thanks for yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. اقتنعتوا بأهمية التخطيط للتقاعد؟ لإعداد خطتكم العملية خذوا مني هالكم نصيحة بمليون. أولاً بلشوا بالادخار بعمر مبكر. كل ما زادت مدة الادخار راح يكون عندكم مبلغ أكبر لاستثماره، وحطوا دايماً ببالكم أهمية المساهمة بحسابات التقاعد مثل أنظمة الضمان الاجتماعي. ثانياً استثمروا بحكمة ونوعوا محفظتكم الاستثمارية المناسبة للتقاعد، وخذوا برأي مستشار مالي لتحديد الاستراتيجية الأنسب لكم. ثالثاً ما تنسوا التضخم بخطتكم لأنه حالة اقتصادية متوقعة بأي وقت من الأوقات. رابعاً وفروا فلوسكم لأيام الطوارئ وحطوا مبلغ على جنب حتى ما تضطروا تسحبوا من أموال المعاشات التقاعدية بأي أزمة. خامساً وأهم شيء راجعوا خطة التقاعد تبعكم كل فترة وثانية لتتأكدوا إنكم على الطريق الصحيح. ادخروا قرشكم الأبيض ليومكم الأسود. بلشوا على بكير، خططوا بوعي وحكمة، وما تخافوا من كلمة تأمين. ادرسوا خياراتكم بهدوء وما تسألوا رح نعيش من وين. وهي بتكون خطتنا لأول مليون.